Hello and welcome back to the channel. It's finally time to start building the shed. And hopefully behind me you can see all the parts that we've got collected that we're going to need to figure out exactly where they go. Some of them are quite obvious, for example like the floor down there, but other parts at the moment I have no idea, and that's where the instructions come in, and we really are going to have to take a closer look at those this time to figure out what's going on. So let's make a start and see if we can get this built. In today's episode, I struggle to master the art of building a shed on your own. Also have trouble with keeping hold of my screws, as well as try some gentle persuasion. There's even another box that I've forgotten about, so let's see what's in here. I'm hoping that these are the feet for the floor, but let's see. So fortunately, most of the things seem to be labelled, and where there's not a sticker, it's been imprinted into the plastic. So hopefully that's going to help me put it together. You can now see the tracks around the outside of the base where the walls and the doors are going to go, but they've only been clipped on, so none of this is actually especially secure. As you can see, it moves quite freely. So what we're going to have to do now is just turn this over and put some screws in it to secure it. I'm actually finding this a total pain in the backside to try and do this on the floor, because every time I move it, part of the trim actually pops out. So I've decided to stand it up and rest it on a tree, and I recommend you do the same, or perhaps not a tree, but some other equally handy and solid structure. Okay, so we've got all these now screwed in, so they're not going anywhere. And you can actually lift it no problems at all without them falling off. Now none of these here have actually got any pilot holes, so you've just got to do it yourself, but that's not really too much of a problem. Let's get this laid back down, because it's time to start having a look at the walls. And obviously this is where we're going to see the real transformation. So this is where it really does become a two-person job, to actually get these sides, or the back as this actually is, into the trims on the side. Unfortunately there's just me, so let's see if we can work around this. So just by standing on the floor and keeping that steady and giving the back a gentle tap, just seems to be enough at the moment to hold all of this in place. Obviously being careful not to bend any of this, because it is only plastic after all. Something else I've just noticed is that some of these other trim panels actually have some metal reinforcement in between. So I think that's a really good thing, and hopefully will just help make the structure much more stable. The problem with this is every time you move one bit, something else moves. So what I'm going to have to do is, just as I go, instead of building up bigger structures and then actually screwing it in place, I'm just going to do a few little tack screws as I go. So one day on, and as you can see, some really good progress being made and really taking shape, which is fantastic. I think we are going to have to just cut some of the foliage out of the way by the time we actually get the roof on. But let's continue on, and let's start with that side over there. Moving on to some of the trim pieces now. Some of these are going to go around the door frame as well as around the actual door itself, but the theme of everything being marked with part numbers continues on, and it just makes it really easy to follow exactly where they need to go. Anyway, enough looking at the instructions, let's get them on. So moving on to the roof, we've got this great big bit of plastic here, so we're going to have to get that up there in a minute, which is going to be interesting, but we'll worry about that later. Now, I originally thought when looking at this, just the way that this naturally bends, that it would go on the roof. Let me actually move the camera up. It would go on the roof straight like that, but that's not actually right, because this is actually going to form part of the waterproof apex of the roof. And also as well, there's a rather subtle clue just here. It says that side down, so it'll actually look like that, which when you look at it now, it actually does make sense, but just on initial thought, I thought it went the other way. So in terms of the trim pieces we've got to fit, we've got quite an interesting profile there, and this bit here actually fits on here, and it's this here, there, which I've been reading the instructions, actually clips on here to the top of the walls. At least that's how I read it. So let's give that a try and see if it actually works. So the roof's got a clip into in this rail, in this track, in here. Hopefully you can see. A bit difficult to actually show you in the torch. So it's got a clip into, the front panel here has got a clip into that track, and it's easier said than done. Same for the side, but that's a little bit easier because it is actually, give or take, a bit level. Now, looking on the outside, I've got my trusty hop-up platform now. Can't quite see it, but that rail is in there. It's not quite as simple as just pushing it in, unfortunately. But let's persevere and see if we can get this resolved. And I still don't know why the front of the shed was just so much more painful to try and fit than the rear. But it's an awful lot of footage that you're just not seeing. It took an awful lot more time than actually it's been shown on the video. But one thing that was really handy, and I only used it for the roof, was, and it was actually supplied with a shed, was what's called a spatula, just to help with the insertion of the panel, the roof panel, into the wall. And after all that time and patience, finally, as you can see, it's done and fitted properly. As you can see, I've made up the doors, just very similar to the roof actually, with metal edging, so had to drill some pilot holes again. Got some of the fittings on, as well as the hinges, and no, that's not the end state, and I've not secured them properly yet, but I just want to get them fitted to the actual shed itself, and then we'll secure those in place. Now fortunately, there are actually some pre-drilled holes here in the actual metal edging, so that should be a little bit easier, and hopefully I should just be able to screw this in, but this does need to be lifted slightly, so let me just see how I'll get on doing that. And what I've done just to help me is just stick a twig under the door, just one to keep it in place because it keeps swinging open, but as well just to lift it slightly so I can get hopefully the rest of these in a lot easier. With the doors now on then, this is starting to look much more like a shed rather than a bus shelter. But obviously we've got one more gap to fill in just to make it watertight. Now, this window also has some insulation that they've supplied. So I've actually just put that around the inside of the window. So let's try that and see how it fits. And now for a few finishing touches. And don't forget before you finish, just to make sure you've tightened all the screws that you may not have done, or indeed just go over the instructions again just to make sure that you've not missed any screws either. Well, I hope you've enjoyed the construction of the shed and found it useful. There's going to be one more video to come, and I'm going to go over how much it's cost to do all the works, as well as just go over any niggles and just my overall thoughts of the shed. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share, and I'll see you again soon for that and some more videos back on the channel.